Hello new teachers, this is our second video. This is academic questions. So I have 4 academic questions that you have submitted here. The first one says, what are the best transition techniques for 8th grade students who are on their way to high school? So we talked about this a little bit on Wednesday, but I think we can talk about it in general for all students moving on to the next step in their education. I think it's important for all teachers to talk to their students about next year. Even if you're a kindergarten teacher, what's first grade going to be like? Talking about that. If you're an 8th grade teacher, what is high school going to be like? Here's how it's going to be different. We're going to practice some things that's going to make you prepared for that next step. And so I think talking about it a lot is the first thing you should do. The second thing is make the goals very, very tangible. By saying we need to be mature, or we need to be organized, or we need to work hard, those are very intangible ideas for kids. They don't always know what that means. Their idea of mature is different than yours. So keep that in mind and keep the goals really tangible. So something specific, like we're going to write down our homework every day. And we're going to check and make sure everybody's got their homework down every day. And when everybody's achieved that goal, we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, so something really specific, or even we're just going to clean up our room so it's really nice and it looks really organized in here. Whatever it is, you want to be really specific and give goals that they can accomplish in that short amount of time, and then once everybody's got it, then you can move on to a new goal. So that's the second thing. Be very tangible about your goals for preparing students for the next level. I think a third thing would be incorporating it into your praise. When you're praising students, wow, this is such a great job you've done on this assignment. This looks like a high school student did it. Or this looks like you are ready for that next grade level. Praising them about what they're doing and keep reminding them of what's coming up and preparing them for that through your praise. I would say another thing is to try and incrementally increase responsibility and focus of time. So when kids are young, we give them small periods of time to do things. Start off your semester with, we're going to read quietly for 5 minutes. We're going to see how well we did, and then we're going to increase it to 10 minutes or whatever seems appropriate. So small incremental changes and giving them more and more responsibility and autonomy throughout the semester is important. I think those are probably the most important things. I would definitely say you want to continue to point out those skills that will help them next year by making a big deal out of it. I know I already mentioned praise, but maybe you make posters about it. Maybe you call home to tell parents how well they're doing on certain things. Those will help as well. The next question is, how do I help students that have large learning gaps? For example, teaching students who don't know how to add and subtract, teaching them things like trigonometry. So that's a big challenge that all teachers face. I would say you want to make sure that you gather a lot of data as a teacher. So a lot of times your district, your department, people will give you benchmarks you have to administer to your students. You can do your own teaching benchmarks as well. You can come up with your own little assessments and keep really good records, because if your students are not anywhere near grade level, but you still are responsible for teaching them, you want to be able to show them, their parents, and your administrators that they are still making growth. Even if they're just making growth and they're adding and subtracting, and they're not making it all the way to trig yet, that's okay. But if you can keep a lot of data to show growth, then that's what really matters. Okay, we want to prove how much more they're improving in your class than before they got there. Okay, so that's probably the biggest thing I would say. The second thing I would say is to make the goals smaller for students that are way behind. If you give students something overwhelming, their motivation will fall. So you want to keep the goals small, and throughout the school year you increase them as their skills increase. So maybe you limit the number of homework problems and say, if you can do these 5 and get them right, then we'll see where we're at. Okay, that's our goal. And maybe you eliminate some of the weight of what they're responsible for at that time. Doesn't mean that you're lowering your expectations. It just means you're making the goals reasonable for them. You still make clear that the goal is still to get up to grade level, but I don't believe in lying to kids about where they're at. If they are low, tell them they're low and tell them where they need to be and keep working at it and just stay positive. The next thing What strategies did you find helpful for getting students to enjoy reading and be motivated to read? Okay, that's a great question. So it's hard to get kids to want to read nowadays. One thing you can consider if you have access to technology, reading on a screen is still reading. So reading electronic books or reading from a website is still reading skills. So it's important to allow kids different ways to read. If you are an elementary teacher or an English teacher and you're allowed to bring in different books that are more interesting for them, even graphic novels, comic books, fun things that maybe they'll like. A lot of kids really like informational texts as well about, science topics, animals, cool things like that. That would be something that will motivate them. I used to have a section of time in my class called dessert reading, where we would read what I assigned during class, and near the end of class, you have dessert reading. You get to pick what you want to read. So if you treat it like it's a treat and a reward to read something that they select, then they will start to see it that way, which is good. Another thing that will motivate kids is pairing them up to read. You want to not be afraid of letting them work with their friends to read, but still holding them accountable for doing the reading. So you can tell them you and your friend who like the same book can sit and read together and read out loud back and forth if you want together. And that might be motivational for some kids as well. I think another thing that we always forget as far as reading is talking to parents. I think it's important to tell those parents what the reading level is, encourage parents to set aside time for reading, tell your students' parents when they're doing improvements in reading, make sure they know about that. The next question, what are some activities I can have students work on when they finish their assigned work? Okay, a lot of teachers do this thing where they say, when you're done, go help someone else who needs help. That's great for some kids, but most kids don't actually really enjoy that. It feels kind of like a punishment. I already did all this work myself, now I have to go help someone else do it. It's kind of like reliving it. And so I would say we want to kind of avoid that. What you could do is have each week have a enrichment activity set aside, and this could be specifically something that's challenging, something fun, but still on topic with what you're learning in class, and when they're done they can go work on that enrichment assignment. Another thing you could do is have some simple little activities like crossword puzzles and word searches and fun little things like that, and offer some kind of extra points or incentive for getting so many of them done. You want to try and pick some kind of riddles or little games and activities that might relate to your subject you're teaching or topics you're covering though, so that would be helpful. Okay, that is the end of this video on academic questions. Remember to take the survey that I send out, and I will send out also another video on behavior and discipline.